ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you to another edition of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer, the NFL free agency special right here on the Eastern Observer, alongside my guys Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here on this Wednesday afternoon. We really do appreciate you coming out here and watching us discuss and banter all about the New York Giants, the Jets, a little bit about the Philadelphia Eagles, a little bit about NFL football in general, but we cannot be more happy to see our good friend Ian Schraier because we missed him on our March Madness special. We had Mike Zabo, we had Kevin Connolly. We can't thank those two guys enough for filling in here for you, Ian, but welcome back into the saddle, sir.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be back alongside you, Joey, and of course, Rob as well. And just excited to talk about NFL free agency. I just feel like it's something sometimes that gets a little lost between the NCAA tournament and the start of baseball season. But it's just been a great couple of weeks of NFL free agency, a lot of moves for the local teams. So I'm excited to kind of dive right in and talk about it.
Rob DeLuca, hashtag this is March.
Oh, it is March, and it is a glorious time. I love the fact that the tournament in its swing right now. By the time that our great people see this episode, we'll be in a little bit of a break, but between the second round and the Sweet 16. So we'll know the Sweet 16 by the time we see this. But nonetheless, that's not what we're here for today. Today we got to talk about some football, and honestly, it's a very exciting time for just the first couple days of free agency. Let's do it.
Yeah, not only let's do it, but all I know is, ladies and gentlemen, is that we really do appreciate you joining us here on this Wednesday afternoon. This show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Their newest album, Free Cake, is out now. Play loud. Listen to them on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify by searching the phrase and the term Free Cake. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so ensure, please, if you want to hear Dirty Little Hipster, which was our open, please do that research as well. Let's not forget also, guys, to subscribe to the Primetime Rundown by searching the Primetime Rundown on YouTube, by searching I-95 Sports Network, but also if you do decide to search the Primetime Rundown, it will pop up on the following platforms: Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can search the Primetime Rundown. So please do that moving forward, because we'd love to have you subscribe to our show and see us live every Friday night. But until April 2nd is when we will be coming out with a few more specials. We've got another one coming your way next Tuesday night. And that's going to be the MLB preview special, because that is just right around the corner as well. And we are obviously stoked with baseball, but today is NFL free agency day. And as DeLuca did say, things get turned in with, or things get mixed in with the NCAA tournament. But we cannot forget, NFL free agency has kicked off. And it kicked off on March 17th, just last week. And for the New York Giant fans out there, especially for my two guys on here who are diehard New York Giants fans, you have to be extremely happy. Just a couple of days ago on Monday afternoon, the New York Giants and cornerback Adoree Jackson signed a 3-year deal worth $39 million. And really, you can thank cornerback Logan Ryan for all of that to come to fruition. So, Ian, let's start with you here. Adoree Jackson had a little bit of turmoil in Tennessee under head coach Mike Vrabel. He was a former first-round draft pick, so he does have some potential. Can he get it done in this defensive scheme here in New Jersey?
Yeah, I can. It was actually a very surprising cut, Joey, by the Tennessee Titans. They didn't expect to have to cut Adoree Jackson, as you had mentioned, a former first-round draft pick. I think he was drafted 15th overall a few years ago. And the Giants, perceivably at the time, when they signed him on Monday, got the best cornerback that was still available in the free agency market. The only player that was taken a little bit earlier that you would rate above him at this point was Patrick Peterson, who signed a 1-year deal with the Vikings. But it seems like with the Giants signings, and I know we're going to get into Kenny Golladay in a minute as well, but Jabril Peppers and the other player that you had mentioned, Logan Ryan, I want to get to in a second, but Jabril Peppers and Darnay Holmes, both members of the Giants secondary, were actively trying to recruit Adoree Jackson to come to the Giants. And then on top of that, they decided to invite his former teammate who now starts for the Giants, Logan Ryan, to fly up from Florida to New Jersey to take him out for a nice steak dinner. And now he is a New York Football Giant. I can't say as a Giant fan I'm so relieved as a Giants fan that now there's really going to be another CB1 on the opposite side now of James Bradberry.
Yeah.
And what that does is I mean, you go back a couple of years ago, the secondary was one of the big Achilles heels for the Giants ever since that they got rid of Janoris Jenkins. Maybe even a little before they got rid of Janoris Jenkins. Like they just couldn't seem in the secondary to stop a big play in the fourth quarter. Now they're exceptionally deep in the secondary. Now you got Bradberry on one side, you got Jackson on the other. Now you could do a couple of different things with Logan Ryan. Remember when Logan Ryan came in, Logan Ryan was supposed to be a starting safety. And what they had to do was because Xavier McKinney went down, he was supposed to be the starting slot corner. And when Xavier McKinney, their second-round draft pick, went down, they pushed him back to safety because he had played that position before. Right. Now, McKinney's supposedly coming back healthy. He's your second-round draft pick. He started the last few games last year. Maybe Peppers and McKinney is your your two starting safeties, with Bradberry, Jackson, and Ryan your starting corners, with Darnay Holmes and Isaac Yiadom, both of whom were starters last year, coming off the bench. It's just incredible to see players now who wanted to avoid Dave Gettleman in the worst way. Yeah, it just seems that Joe Judge has just created such a culture that it's inviting players, big name, big time players that want to come play for this team. Yeah, and you know what? The crazy thing too here is that it's not far off, guys, and this hurts me to say. But Rob DeLuca, it does. It really does. And I know for all of those that will be listening and watching this on either on demand or on YouTube or on Facebook, wherever you may view or listen to us, as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, it is very difficult to say that this New York Giants team has one of the deepest, if not the deepest secondary in the entire NFL on paper as of right now. The two that I could think of at this moment in time would be surprisingly, not even surprisingly, the Miami Dolphins, who obviously have had a fantastic secondary throughout their lowly years a few years ago. They then signed, they had Xavier Howard. They then signed Byron Jones. Mm-hmm. So, and then on top of it, they also traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick as well. Now the New York Giants also have, as we did say, Adoree Jackson, Logan Ryan as the slot corner, who can also probably play safety in his latter years. Xavier McKinney, as we did bring up, Darnay Holmes, James Bradberry. I think now I'm starting to repeat myself here. But it just shows how there are a very limited number of teams that have this depth in the secondary, and you can never count out the New England Patriots either. Again, because on paper they do have it. We'll see how it transitions on the field. We'll get to the Pats later on in the show. But DeLuca, I mean, for you as a New York Giants fan, how happy are you when you hear this Adoree Jackson signing, when just a few days prior to him signing, Kenny Golladay signed a deal, and then just before that, you now have a Pro Bowl tight end coming to New Jersey named Kyle Rudolph, when you're beginning to see a lot of these moves happening because of the pandemic, and these teams are not able to hold on to these guys because the cap now is down to $185 million.
Well, first of all, Joey, I have to say we already have our Pro Bowl tight end in Evan Ingram, if you ask the NFL from this year. So we already have one. So now we have another. So the tight end game couldn't be stronger. But no, in all seriousness, this has been a great week for New York Giants fans since NFL free agency started last week. This has been electric. And honestly, I'll start with Adoree Jackson here. Since Ian rattled off just about everything about his defensive game, there's nothing more I could add to that other than this just provides further depth for the Giants, which is huge. There is one thing that stuck out to me on his stat page that I think the Giants could really benefit from, that the Titans actually used Jackson for, and that's his kick and punt returning. They actually used him on special teams. And he does not have bad numbers when he was out there doing them. In his rookie year, he got 34 returns. He was just shy of 300 yards.
Yeah,
so and that is a lot more than we can say for some of these past players that the Giants have used out there on special teams. So it honestly feels good to see that the Giants are plugging holes not only on their defensive side, but you get it filling two birds with one stone, essentially. Because I think this is a chance for the Giants to use Jackson in a role like that, especially when the back end is so deep.
Although, Rob, I do think at some point Jabril Peppers is going to break one on a punt. He's so close every year.
He's gotta. You gotta think at some point he's going to. And honestly, that's why I love the Adoree Jackson signing, because it's just more depth. Because now you can rotate. Because now even on the special team, you can rotate them in. That way, that your opponent's got to think about, okay, how are we going to tackle this? How are we going to tackle this guy? But then it's like one drive later, it's like, oh, now we got to deal with another one. It's not the same guy, so it's like, where's his weak spot? So you got to keep them guessing, which I like.
Yeah, now, and just to interject here as well. Also, the New York Giants also re-signed Leonard Williams as well. Big Cat. You guys signed him as well. In addition to Kyle Rudolph, I don't mean to cut you off there, DeLuca, but it just shows that this team is finally over that low couple of seasons where it was not technically, and something this is what Ian pointed out with New England. It's not a rebuild, but it is sort of a reload. And that's the part where I really believe that is where the New York Giants did go to. They never went to a full-fledged rebuild. They didn't. No. I personally believe, especially because that is not what they do. They are not the New York Jets, and they do not want to look like their neighbors on the opposite side of the building in the New York Jets. They don't want to look like that. They can't look like that. They are the money makers in New York. They are the true primetime team that ends up, that represents New York, or represents the lower tier of New York rather. So DeLuca, keep going with the rest of your Giants take.
Sure. All right, so let's move on to Kenny Golladay. This is a signing that had to happen. The Adoree Jackson signing is great, but it did not necessarily have to happen. This Kenny Golladay signing had to happen. What this does is gives the New York Giants a true number one receiver for the first time since Odell Beckham Jr. And there is no way around that. I mean, look, Golladay obviously had a lower year, but his injury sidelined him. He only played 5 games in 2020. So you got to look for a bounce back year, because the year prior he was on a tear. He played every game.
He was, yeah.
65 catches for just under 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns. So and Kenny Golladay is also fast, just like Odell Beckham was. This is exactly the kind of weapon that Daniel Jones has been waiting for. And it is, since Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the New York Giants, as stated multiple times by Dave Gettleman, John Mara, it is pretty clear that is the route they want to go with. And this is I think a make or break year for Daniel Jones. So what the Giants have to do now is build on that offensive line to give him more protection, because now he finally has the weapons, and Golladay is going to be his biggest weapon without question. And what that'll do is actually help up Darius Slayton's number, if you ask me, because eventually teams are going to be like, okay, we got to make sure Golladay is shut down. But if you shut down Golladay, you have someone else on the opposite side. You're leaving a problem in that Daniel Jones's favorite receiver, Darius Slayton's going to be open. So by getting a true number one, you're allowing some of the other former number ones or supposed number ones, you're allowing them to be wide open and give Daniel Jones that second option, which is something I feel he hasn't really had since getting here, because his protection has just been poor, to be as generous as possible. He has just not had the protection he's entitled to.
And this is something else, too, that I want to bring up here, because you speak about the protection, and we did see I don't know, Ian Schraier, if we want to call it a cap casualty, but Kevin Zeitler, who had a very fantastic year, or what we thought it was. He was a part of if I'm not mistaken, he was a part of the Odell Beckham trade. It was
Zeitler and Jabril for Odell.
Jabril. Right.
For Zeitler, Jabril, and draft picks for Odell. And Olivier Vernon.
Right, yep. Exactly, yes. And that was, all the money heading towards Cleveland and with the massive dead cap for Odell. But we digress there. But Kevin Zeitler, he did find a new home in Baltimore. But we speak about, or DeLuca speaks of, the protection for Daniel Jones. That right guard spot is now a little bit, let's call it open, if you will. Who do you see now fills that void there, Ian? Because when you have a Pro Bowl right guard in Zeitler now moving on because you couldn't pay that $10 million cap hit, and you go out and you spend that money on obviously one of the most important positions in football in the secondary, or or as a cornerback or a CB1, 1A, if you will. Now you're putting some pressure on Nate Solder, who also was out for the year last year because he opted out of the season. Who do you turn to for that right guard spot, especially when the offensive line has been even more of an Achilles heel than the secondary?
Sure. Well, the depth chart would tell you that job would either go to Will Hernandez or Shane Lemieux. But I'm going to bring up the name that you just said, and I'm going to say Nate Solder, and this is why. Nate Solder is getting up there in age. He has not been a penny's worth of the left tackle that the Giants paid him to be when they signed him. They drafted, let us not forget, they drafted their left tackle last year in Andrew Thomas out of Georgia, who really came on a lot better in the second half of the season, and also drafted their right tackle in the third round last year in Matt Pert. So if you want to, and you want to take a little more pressure off Solder and a guy who has a lot of experience, maybe he slides inside and takes over that right guard role, especially if guys like Hernandez or Lemieux can't compete. And remember, they're restructuring Nate Solder's contract. So that's part of it too. So he's not making anywhere close, or I would think he's going to make a percentage of the amount of money that he was making to remain with the Giants, because there was a lot of talk that he would also become a cap casualty. With respect to Zeitler, though, I mean, this is actually where I have to give credit to the New York Giants general manager, Dave Gettleman, because the reason that the Giants have been able to make all these moves is because they're backloading contracts. I think Kenny Golladay is making somewhere around $4 to $5 million his first year here, and then everything is backloaded after that. So granted, for future general managers, if Dave Gettleman doesn't end up staying, it isn't the greatest thing for the next general manager that comes in, because you're inheriting large amount of contracts that if you eventually decide to cut, you're taking on a lot of dead cap. But the Giants would not have Adoree Jackson. The Giants would not have Kenny Golladay. The Giants would not have Kyle Rudolph if Dave Gettleman didn't make that sacrifice. So to his credit, he really has had an excellent free agent. An excellent free agency period thus far. I can't imagine they're really going to make many more moves to this point up until the draft. I just want to get to Rob's point here about Golladay. Yes, I agree with him 100% that this is the Giants' first number one wide receiver since Odell Beckham. I disagree with respect to that. He's a guy who can stretch the field. Yeah, he's a good route runner, but he reminds me a little bit of a former New York Giants wide receiver from 2007 by the name of Plaxico Burress. The height, the stature, and the ability to make the contested catch. That is something the Giants have been missing. Yes, Odell had that ability, especially because he could, make these acrobatic.
Totally agree with you, Ian.
One-handed catches.
Honestly, that's the first receiver I think of when I think of Golladay right now. Is like who on the previous Giants teams does he remind me of immediately? Let's go Bears.
Yeah. I mean, he has the highest Pro Football Focus rating of any receiver right now in the National Football League when it comes to contested catches. The only issue is how is he going to rehab off his hip injury? He's 2 years removed from a 1,000-yard, 11 touchdown season. Let's not forget that. He got hurt last year. Because he had a hip injury. But look, they went out there. Juju Smith stayed home. Allen Robinson stayed home. Chris Godwin stayed home. So the best receiver on the market was Kenny Golladay, and the Giants went out there and got them. And it just such an impressive for a team that came in with no cap space, cut Kevin Zeitler. I can get into Dalvin Tomlinson in a second. That's going to be a really rough loss for this team. But the ability to go out there and sign 3 names to fill 3 key positions. And Rob, to your Adoree Jackson point, Adoree Jackson is huge. I mean, yeah, maybe they didn't need exactly somebody in that secondary. I'm telling you, they needed that CB2 because now when it comes draft time, this team can actually, unless they want to address offensive line, which I think is the way to go at this point, they can actually now draft best player available.
I was just gonna bring the draft up because we had mentioned it. Ian, I mean, since we're the Giants fans here, I mean, look, there's one name out there. If they do decide to go with the line at number 11, which they very well could, because I don't know
They should,
yeah, but I don't know, because when it comes to best player available, I think you got to be thinking about guys like Kyle Pitts and all that. Sure. But I don't think he'll be readily available at number 11. No. So you either got to after that you look at a receiver like Devonta Smith, but that would be my
Devonta Smith won't be there. If I had to think,
and you don't waste you in my opinion, you do not waste that number 11. And something else, guys, I want to bring up here, and I don't mean to interrupt you here, but
no, go ahead, Joey.
Something that I was just looking at on the transaction wire here, which I was unaware that the New York Giants signed a former Bengals wide receiver named John Ross.
Yeah, the combine freak. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And not only was he a combine freak, but also there would be times in Cincinnati when he was with Andy Dalton a few times, he showed some. Again, I don't want to blow him up and say that he's fantastic, but
no, I mean
sparks of what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, look, they got deeper. They got deeper at wide receiver, Joey. He ran a 4.240 at the combine. It's still the fastest combine speed to date. To Kyle Pitts' credit, he ran a 4.46. Yeah. I think it was today at his pro day. But
he had a good pro day, Kyle Pitts.
Besides that point, this team has now gotten deeper. Yeah. At wide receiver. So now your depth chart, when you go down, no Golden Tate anymore, but now you've got Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, John Ross, and then you've got guys like Dante Pettis, Austin Mack. Behind them that add more depth. This team is continually adding depth and getting better. Look, I'll be the first to say when the first move the Giants made this offseason was they cut down, they let Dalvin Tomlinson walk away. This team has made a habit year after year of letting their second round draft picks walk away. And this is a guy that has really fortified the middle of that defensive line. A great run stopper, can really create a little havoc on the interior, sometimes can get to the quarterback, but really you leave that to Leonard Williams. But I'm just thinking at this point, guys like Art Stapleton are talking about the Giants going after guys like Kawan Short and going after these second or third, like bringing back Jonathan Hankins, like guys who are just have not panned out in the league. And you're, as a Giants fan, you're worried because you're like, you think the team is on the up under Joe Judge. You think that, my floor for that Giants team last year was 6-10. They finished 6-10.
Well, for a cheaper option, Jonathan Hankins would be not. Yeah,
but
same thing with Kawan Short.
They didn't re-sign him because he didn't pan. I mean, granted, he was another second round pick that they just didn't re-sign. But again, he wasn't. He had his good moments again, but he was on that 2016 playoff team. Yeah. But for the Giants, when I saw that Hankins was gone, and this team, which had no cap space, was just basically investing the rest of their cap in Leonard Williams, ignoring everywhere else. Only thing you could think to yourself is this team's only going down next year, not going up. And now you look at the moves that they've made and allocating money the right way. Just an incredible job by the Giants front office. And I can't believe I'm saying that because, look, I vouched for Gettleman when they first hired him. I was ready at the end of last year for them to get rid of him, but I mean, the guy is just earning more and more trust with the Giant fan base right now.
How crazy is that?
He has to, because he's in that position now. He's like, oh no, I better go spend money and get these things done. Otherwise, I'm gone next year. And Ian, to quickly address the draft, one name that sticks out if the Giants do go with the line, you got to think Northwestern.
Yes,
Rashawn Slater. I would think that's a great move at 11. It's a move that allows Nate Solder to essentially move around the offensive line because Slater plays on the left. So Solder could essentially move to the right because of bringing someone like Slater in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'm going to, we're going to move on in a second here. But I would agree with you at that point because it does seem like Slater seems like the obvious pick, at least for a guy for a team that needs a right guard to replace Kevin Zeitler, or at least a first round pick to replace Kevin Zeitler. But I don't think we can count out Penei Sewell at this point for the Giants, and I'm going to tell you why. It's this team that there's a lot of talk that quarterbacks are going to go very, very quickly within the first 10 picks. And then after that, you've got guys like Kyle Pitts that's probably now a top 10 pick. Devontae Smith is a top 10 pick. Is even Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, all these wide receivers, are they now top 10 picks? So is it possible that if they get down close enough, would the Giants even trade up from 11 to get the best offensive lineman in the draft? I don't know. Okay. Yeah. That's one option. Another option that they would look into, because they're still not there in the linebacking core, would be to draft the Penn State linebacker, Micah Parsons. So, but the problem is he opted out of the college football season. So the issue is you don't know what kind of athlete you're looking at, because you really have no tape to go off of. But look, because they signed Adoree Jackson, I can't stress this enough, this puts them in a really good situation come draft night.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's go forward, Joey.
Before we go forward, something that we want to bring up here as well is that we didn't really get into the whole Kyle Rudolph thing here. Guys,
Sure.
just by looking at Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph here, courtesy of our friends at Spot Track, the New York Giants, as of today, have $1.976 million in cap space. That looks to me like prior to the Nate Solder restructure, because as of today, he is making $10,600,000 as his cap hit. That obviously will change. We will see how much more cap space that they do build or they do add following that restructure. But we do have to say most likely probably above $5 million. So they technically do have room for a couple more moves, which would definitely be possibly very significant for them. But again, everything that I personally say here, folks, is that it is all on paper. We have to see how this team plays on the field. Again, this team looks great, but again, they are not the reigning division champs. The Washington football team is. Before we get to them, though, Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph take up currently about $11 million of the cap. A combined $11 million. Kyle Rudolph and Evan Ingram, as DeLuca said, according to the NFL, the aforementioned Ingram is a Pro Bowler. Clearly, DeLuca thinks otherwise. Do you think that Rudolph and this signing was a good one? Yes or no, Rob DeLuca?
Yeah, I think it's great for a couple of reasons. Look, Rudolph's getting up there in age. We know that. However, he's still got a little bit of football left in him. And you know what it does? It allows Ingram to take some breaks, because there is no excuse for how he played last year. It was not good. The fact that he was named a Pro Bowler is beyond me. But at the same, maybe he felt like he was overworked, and that's why his performance was suffering. So I think it's good that this will allow him to take some reps off, as well as this is honestly better for Saquon Barkley, because Kyle Rudolph is 10 times the blocking tight end that Evan Ingram is. So this is going to allow Barkley to move, and that is what Giants fans have been waiting for, because of if the Giants build that offensive line, and now they've got Kyle Rudolph to help block. After this, Barkley's back from injury. Giants fans want him to stay healthy, because we saw what he did his rookie year. We know what he can do. So Giants fans are waiting to unleash the Saquon. We're talking potential comeback player of the year type numbers is what Giants fans are hoping for. So I think Rudolph helps in more than just a couple of extra pair of hands out there on the passing game. He is vital to this blocking game and helping out Barkley get through.
Fellas, let me just say this here. Ian Schraier, I think this really is the biggest signing for the New York Giants for their entire free agency as we wrap up the football team, the football Giants. I don't know. I'm looking here and I see now a new backup quarterback in Mike Glennon, who could possibly take over for Daniel Jones at some point. Now that is something wacky.
It's a whole lot better than Colt McCoy. I mean, look, look, Colt McCoy delivered the greatest win of the Giants season last year against Seattle. But I want to jump back on to Kyle Rudolph for a second. I thought Rob hit the nail on the head. Yes, Kyle Rudolph is there to open up holes for Saquon Barkley. Kyle Rudolph is one of the slowest tight ends in the National Football League. The reason the Giants signed him is and Kyle Rudolph has already been quoted as saying it, he is there to block. He is there to open up holes for Saquon Barkley. Now, offensively, he is an exceptional red zone threat. And he's also a very good third and intermediate, third and short, pass catching tight end. You need a guy on 3rd and 5 to get you to the sticks. And, Rudolph, 31 years old, guy's built like a machine. Yeah, he's that kind of player. But what I think it does is, and look, I'm not one to jump on the Evan Ingram train, but I think what this is going to do, remember, the Giants now have a very, very crowded tight end room. Yeah. You've got Kyle Rudolph, Evan Ingram, Caden Smith, and Levine Toilolo. You have 4 tight ends in that room. How many teams do you see that have 4 tight ends on their depth chart, all who have the capability to start? So I think what you're going to see now, and this gives Joe Judge and Garrett, Jason Garrett, the opportunity, the breathing room to do so, is to run a couple of multi-tight end sets where you're going to have Rudolph on one side, maybe Caden Smith or Toilolo blocking on the other, and then you split Evan Ingram out and turn him into a wide receiver because he has that kind of capability. And maybe if you're not worried about for 60% of the snaps having Evan Ingram be a blocker, which he has shown he cannot be, maybe he begins to focus a little more on as a wide receiver. I'm not trying to compare him to Travis Kelce, but putting him in that kind of role so he can maybe succeed.
It's definitely a possibility, ladies and gentlemen. And Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca for the New York Football Giants. They are far from done following the Nate Solder restructuring of the contract. Who knows? Maybe they might have some room for something else. There is a distinct possibility. There are names still out there. But let's move on to the Washington football team, ladies and gentlemen, because Fitzmagic is now in our nation's capital. Oh, yes, he is. Let's ask the audience now, how many teams does that make it for Ryan Fitzmagic? I don't know. How about maybe 5, 6, 7 that I could think of off the top of my head? So this would be 8 teams?
He's played in the entire AFC East. I know that for sure. He's checked every box.
Exactly. And now he's back in the East, but he is in the opposite conference in the NFC East. You'd figure he would be the starter because Taylor Heineke is, I don't know, still young. He did show some signs of hope, if you will, or show some signs of growth. Kyle Allen is no longer there. Alex Smith is no longer there. Dwayne Haskins is no longer there. There's literally no one there, and it is now going to be a completely different QB room. They also did sign Curtis Samuel, too, to go opposite of Terry McLaurin. Not a bad move there, Ron Rivera and football team. I think that's a great signing, the Curtis Samuel one, though.
Yeah, Joey, I mean, look, this is interesting because just when it looked like, the Washington football team just won the NFC East. Granted, they won it at 7-9. It wasn't that impressive, and now they don't have a quarter. Well, granted,
and they won it fraudulently.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, I didn't want to go there. The Eagles cheated. The Eagles tanked. We all know that, and that's that. But it looked like they didn't have a quarterback. Exactly, that guy. It looked like the Washington football team wasn't going to have a quarterback, and then boom, they get arguably. While he's not one of the best, you can make an argument that he's one of the more reliable ones. He's there when you need him, and he can get the work done. Look how Miami performed before they randomly started to use Tua. Miami wasn't doing bad before they made the switch. Fitzpatrick is a perfectly reliable guy, and with the weapons he's got now, he's got McLaurin, and now he's got a guy like Samuel. This Washington football team is not necessarily a joke. They absolutely have a shot at repeating and winning the NFC East, but with a legitimate record this time.
Well, not only that, too, but also their defense, too, is still pretty decent as well. Yeah. Jonathan Allen on that line, they're
front four. Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Front four, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if I'm not mistaken, Ryan Kerrigan, I don't think he's there.
No, he's no longer there, but their secondary is still very weak.
Right. Exactly. So their front, their defensive line is not bad. Do they have a shot? I personally do not believe that they have a shot because I don't want to say that they are a flash in the pan, but also we have seen the different I don't want to call them champions, but division winners since 2011. It has changed and rotated every single year. There has not been a repeat winner. I don't know.
I think it's earlier than that, Joe. I think
it goes longer.
I think it's like the Eagles in 2002.
So
that's one.
So then in that case, then do we see a repeat division champion in the year 2021? I say no.
I think it's possible. Just
possible.
because Fitzpatrick is a gamer. I mean, he's turning 39 in November, but the guy just continues to be a gamer. Look, for half the season, if not more, I mean, we saw how much the Dolphins offense took a nosedive once they put Tua in, and when they brought Fitz back in, how much of a different team they were. So the fact now that you have Antonio Gibson, who's a rising, I don't want to call him a rising star just yet, but who's rising in the league at the running back position. Now you've got another solid wide receiver option opposite Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, who is his former teammate at Ohio State, number one. And number two, Curtis Samuel played for Ron Rivera in Carolina. So you have that familiarity in both areas. And then you have certainly a decent tight end in Logan Thomas, who very quietly also went under the radar last year. Logan Thomas, I mean, in the two, I don't have his stats in front of me, but I feel like in the two games against the Giants, it always seemed like he came up with a big touchdown when they needed it. The only things I think standing in their way, number one, is Dallas. I just don't think with Dak coming back that you can immediately write them off. They still have Zeke. I think CD is going to have a great second year. I think he's just due to. I think at this point you can't write off the Giants either. I think they're finding ways to get better. I don't know if they're there yet because the jury is still very much out on Daniel Jones, and understandably so. But one thing that worked to the Washington football team's results last year. Remember, they started the year, 1-5, 1-6, and then they won 5 of their final 6 games, all against teams that did not make the playoffs. The only team that they won 4 of their final 5 wins at the end of the year did not come against playoff teams. The only one that did was that win against the fraudulent Steelers. So I think that's going to change a little bit. I think, remember, the NFC East is playing the AFC West this year, so you're going to play Mahomes. You're going to play the Chargers, who are no longer a doormat, even though they still act like a doormat because they can't close games out. They're going to play the NFC South, so that means you've got Brady. You've got no Breeze anymore, but you still got the Saints. The Falcons, I think, will be a little bit better. And then, because remember, you finished in first place in your division. So now what happens? So now you've got first place in the NFC North. So you got the Packers. You got first place in the NFC West. That's the Seahawks. And now if this 17th game gets approved, you get the first place team in the AFC East. So now you get Buffalo. So
real New York team, yes.
So I think when you look down the schedule and look at their schedule from last year and compare it to this year, it puts them in a look. They have two of the rising stars in the league in Montez Sweat and Chase Young. I mean, they were just incredible last year. I mean, they were the driving force, really, besides Alex Smith, of this team getting to the playoffs and nearly beating Tampa in the wild card game. But let's see how they perform when just like the Giants, the way the Giants had a cupcake schedule in 2016 and lost to the teams that were so much better than they were, despite the boat trip. Let's see how they perform in 2021. They're going to have a much harder schedule to go up against.
Right. Well, and that's the biggest thing too, because I think of the teams that have gone from worst to first. Could it happen? But now there's a distinct possibility that they could go from first to worst. Rob DeLuca, your thoughts on that as we wrap up the football team?
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look. Looking at the NFC East, it is a hard schedule this year. It's not easy.
Very hard.
And because that 17th game, I mean, it's not officially, it's going to be approved. So they're going to play Buffalo, which is not a fun task whatsoever. Nope. I mean, especially if that game is in Buffalo. I don't know if that's determined whether it's going to be in Buffalo or Washington, but it is determined.
Because
the Giants it's in Washington. So that's
because the
in Landover, Maryland. Yes.
No, wait. Sorry, hold on. I know the
I don't know.
The Eagles come to the Jets. The Giants go to Miami.
Yeah.
The Dallas goes to New England, which means Buffalo comes to Washington. Sorry,
Okay,
I didn't mean to cut you off. That would have bothered me. So thank you.
It's interesting. But yes, in the
stats guy, ladies and gentlemen.
In the too early to tell. # This is March. Eastern Observer predictions of the NFC East. Right now, it's
wide open.
It's wide open, but if I had gun to my head, I had to pick. It looks like Dallas. I mean, with Dak back, all those wide receiver weapons, Zeke is not going to have that much of a struggle as he did this year. It's literally just not going to happen. He is not going to be that bad again. If he is, then Dallas has a big.
It's contingent on their offensive line. Rob, it really is. Their offensive line isn't what it was.
Right. No, exactly. That's absolutely true. But Zeke Elliott is still supposed to be this freak of nature, and they paid him to be such freak of nature.
I'm going to interject you there for a second, and here's why.
But he also
because I'm going to ask you: don't the Giants have a pretty good running back, right?
Absolutely.
They don't have much of an offensive line.
No,
right?
they don't.
Okay, so there's your answer.
But that's what we're paying these men for. That's what we're supposed to be paying him for. You're supposed to get around that problem. You're supposed to be good enough to be better than that problem. Granted, if it's as atrocious as what both New York and Dallas had, sure, there's going to be some struggles, but you shouldn't be that bad.
I disagree with you, but go ahead.
No. I mean, look, that's why we're here. This is why we can.
And I'll just throw in one last thing here, and basically what it comes down to is that you need a solid offensive line in order for anybody to be
definitely, but
and not only that too. Everyone is human, regardless of being a freak of nature. The bottom line here is that offensive line has taken a complete nosedive. Let's be honest here.
No, it has.
We look at Kansas City, right? They just released both of their tackles because they have no money, okay? And Tyreek Hill said this afternoon, quote, "Once I'm signed, I'm signed." That man will not be taking a pay cut, or he will not be restructuring his deal. So you want to talk about in terms of these freaks of nature? Let's see how the running back room is going to be when there is one game of struggle in Kansas City. Okay?
No, I get it. I get it. I'm just saying. Look, you need an offensive line to succeed as a running back. But
yeah, you do.
Let's be real. Zeke had a little bit of a fumbling problem last season too, which you can't exactly blame on the offensive line.
But at the same time, though, you have to realize, though, is that when they made the playoffs just a few years ago, okay, their offensive line was one of the best.
The best.
The best.
Yeah, no,
arguably.
And it slowly has gone down.
It's the same thing from the Giants in their Super Bowl years. They had probably one of the greatest 5, maybe in team history, certainly of those seasons.
Who was this?
He's talking about the Sean O'Hara, Snee, Kareem McKenzie years.
The same thing goes with my
just been a 2017. A slow, torturous burn ever since. Absolutely.
Like when you look at that, and I know we keep kind of shouting over each other, but like I know with
that's the point of this show.
That's true. But with the Cowboys, when you look at the Cowboys, okay, you have to remember Travis Frederick had I can't remember what his injury was, but there was talk of him never coming back.
Yeah.
Zach Martin, I think, is really at this point now the only holdover from that team that went to the playoffs a few years ago. And when you remember that team was really at its peak at its offensive line, Zeke could run north-south in any direction he wanted to because the offensive line was so porous. He was forced to become more of an east-west back, and that's why he didn't put up the numbers that he did. I don't care how great of a running back you are. If you don't have the offensive line to support and open up the holes for you, and we've seen it the last 2 years, injury with the exception with Saquon, you see how bad a team can get if they don't have the offensive line, A, to protect the quarterback, and B, to open up holes for the running game. And that's crucial for Dallas in both facets.
And not only that, too, this is something I want to bring up, too. I look at the depth chart right now. Tyron Smith last year was injured, okay? Zach Martin, La'el Collins, too, has not been, the same. And Travis Frederick, if I'm not mistaken, he was the right tackle at the time. Zach Martin was the right guard, I believe. or was he the left guard?
No, Frederick's always been the center.
Frederick has been in the center, excuse me. So Martin was a guard.
Left guard or right guard? One of
the two. But Lyle Collins he was at one point a left tackle. He was at one point a guard. And there was also some problems with him too legally as well. Okay. So we have to look at what everything is all about here. And their wide receiver room is fantastic, but their offensive line has taken a complete nosedive. And we'll see where that goes here. But we discussed earlier about the New York Jets earlier about how that 17th game, the Eagles are going to be heading to the Meadowlands. Now would be a second time in a single season. Due to that 17th game on the 2021 schedule. Not official yet, though, folks, but I'm sure it will be said and done. We speak about offensive and defensive lines. The only thing that the New York Jets really signed, or the only person significant that they signed, was wide receiver Corey Davis. Ian Schraier, let's start with you first.
Well, there's a lot of questions. I mean, Joe Douglas is starting to, and I hate to do this to my fellow Met fans that are watching or listening, that he's starting to draw some Wilponian theories. Remember, the Jets came into this offseason with the second most cap space of any team in the National Football League, and the only player that they've signed at this point to a significant contract is Corey Davis. Now, look, I like the Sheldon Rankins signing. I think that's going to give them someone that they could put in the middle of their defensive line that can stop the run. Again, can create a little havoc on the interior. But for a team right now that is struggling on the offensive line, patchwork offensive line, on the defensive line, Sam Darnold desperately in need of weapons. And it seems like this team is out at this point on Deshaun Watson, especially with his off-field issues. So they need to put players around Sam Darnold. Now, granted, they did that the last couple of years. They signed Jamison Crowder, which really has turned out to be a great signing for them. Drafting Denzel Mims, he really showed a lot of promise last year once he was healthy. But what Corey Davis is going to do for them is he's going to stretch the field for the Jets. Corey Davis, I mean, unfortunately, he has never lived up to a piece of that that number 5 overall draft pick by the Tennessee Titans a few years ago out of Western Michigan. He just hasn't been it. I believe in his career so far, he's been in the league 4 years, maybe 5, and Corey Davis has caught 11 touchdown passes. He's never exceeded 1,000 yards receiving, and he was the number 5 overall draft pick in his draft. Not like a 5th rounder, not the number 5 first round overall draft pick of that season. And he just, I think for players like Crowder and Mims, who can now maybe become a little bit more of an intermediate route runner, it's really going to help them out because they're going to have to put man coverage and maybe some safety help over the top against Davis. But if he can't find, if this change of scenery does not work in the Jets' favor for Corey Davis, it's just going to be another name added to a laundry list of wide receivers, whether they've signed them or whether they've drafted them. I mean, let's look back at names like Stephen Hill and Devin Smith, and names that they've acquired in the second round of the draft. I mean, when you look back at the history of New York Jets draft picks in the second round when it comes to wide receivers, it's abysmal. These guys have been, for the most part, one and done. I mean, Chris Herndon, I think, was a first round or a second round draft pick who's the starting tight end for the Jets. He still hasn't panned out. So for Corey Davis, I mean, it's kind of put up or shut up time, but at the same time, and I was reading this report in the New York Post about Corey Davis or Kenny Golladay, who was the better signing. The Jets had the money to go out and try and sign Kenny Golladay. They thought he was too expensive. So if you're not going to go out there with the second most money of any team in the league, with the most glaring needs everywhere around the field, and you want to make sure Sam Darnold's your guy, you're not going to maybe give him the best wide receiver out there. You're going to give him the most unproven because he still hasn't found it yet. It's just more question marks for the Jets. And how much longer can this leash go with Joe Douglas? I don't know.
See, now my question to the two of you is that, do you say that it is Joe Douglas, or do you believe that, because we have to realize something here. Joe Douglas he's learned from a team and a general manager who yes, albeit we want to completely fire Howie Roseman in Philadelphia, yes. But he's watched him. He's learned under him. He's seen these teams. He was under Howie Roseman with the Philadelphia Eagles when they won the Super Bowl. They went out. They signed players, albeit lots of terrible contracts, whatever. But how do you know that the Johnsons up above, who are the ones signing the checks, as Ian did say, a little Wilponian type voodoo stuff here, could be happening on the opposite side of MetLife Stadium? How do we know that maybe he is the one that is wrapped around the neck with a leash?
I'll jump in here for a second.
Are pulling back.
Well, look, remember, Woody Johnson wasn't involved with this team for 4 years because he was Trump's ambassador to the UK when Donald Trump was president of the United States.
Fine.
So Woody Johnson really did not have much involvement with the team. That's why he turned control over to his brother. And remember, when Woody Johnson, before he became ambassador and held a government position, he was the reason why Brett Favre came to the Jets.
Right.
He was the reason why Tim Tebow came to the Jets, because the way Woody Johnson, I'm not trying to say that Woody Johnson doesn't want to win, but Woody Johnson cares more about putting season ticket holders in the stadium. That's what he cares about. That's why he got Favre. That's why he got Tebow, because he just figured it's just going to create this aura of the fact, because we signed Brett Favre, we're going to be a winning team. Because we signed Tim Tebow, we're going to win a championship because he led the Broncos to an overtime win in the playoffs. No, I'm not saying that the Johnsons may not have some involvement, but remember, Chris Johnson was the one who was overseeing everything for the first year and change that Joe Douglas was there. Now you've inherited the second most, you have the second most cap space of any team in the NFL. And let me add to this, you let your best pass rusher walk away. Okay, Henry Anderson walked away and now went to sign with your arch rival, number one. Number two, they said that they were involved on both Matt Judon and Joe Thuney, both of whom they didn't pay for or didn't pay enough for and have now since gone elsewhere. Matt Judon's in New England, and Joe Thuney's in Kansas City. Yeah. God bless you. And Joe Thuney is in Kansas City. So you want to come out there? I mean, look, all the talk during the whole offseason was Deshaun Watson this, Deshaun Watson that, Deshaun Watson this, and we're going to trade draft picks because we've got them, especially the draft picks from the Jamal Adams trade. But I don't want to sit here and say that it's all on the Johnsons why they're not spending money. But
it could be on Woody.
It could be on Woody, but I think to a certain extent, and I'm not trying to say that you're trying to protect your hometown former front office guy, but at the same time, I think that they've only signed Sheldon Rankins and they signed Corey Davis, and they still have millions of dollars left to be spent. And now there's even talk that Richard Sherman isn't even going to be a Jet. And this team is in dire need everywhere. Everywhere. So every position on the field, maybe with the exception of quarterback, they need to fill a spot. And this guy has yet to spend any money.
Okay, so I want to interject here. And just a couple of years ago, okay, when the New York Jets went out and they spent a lot of money, who was the one signing the checks? Chris Johnson was, not Woody. Okay. In that time, okay, that Woody was the ambassador, okay, in that 4-year span, okay, Woody had no part of the team. Okay. He was not the one signing the checks. Chris was. Now Woody's back in charge and he's the one signing the checks. You look and you see, and I'd love to ask Kevin Connolly this because he's a diehard Jets fan and he could, live through the pain and everything. But you saw just a couple of years ago when they signed CJ Mosley, Avery Williamson, they actually tried. Okay. They tried. And then they also tried last year as well, about that much. Okay. They tried, they did this. And now we're starting to see this. I don't know, guys. Is it a coincidence that Woody is back in the saddle? Is it coincidence that, now that he's back, that all of a sudden they're not spending any money? Is it a coincidence that the New York Jets all of a sudden have the number 2 most or the second most money to spend? They're not spending a dime. And according to our good friends at Spot Track, if I'm not mistaken here, from what I'm reading, the way it looks here is that they have the 5th most cap space in the entire NFL at $35 million. Why are you not spending that money? What are you doing exactly? Ian said it right. But and to go back to your point of protecting my hometown guy, no, that's not the case whatsoever. The fact is that if he was given a looser leash where he would be able to go spend that money, listen, look at Sandy Alderson. You bring up the Will Pontian part, right? Sandy Alderson now has gotten the green light to go ahead, make these trades, make these signings, and to be able to do whatever. Okay. Just before Joe Douglas had gotten there, you had seen that I'm blanking out on the previous general manager.
Not Tannenbaum. It was Tannenbaum, Idzik, and then it was
an M. McCagnon, right, with Mike McCagnon. He went out and he went to go sign CJ Mosley, Avery Williamson, and that whole laundry list of guys that could have really been on paper a playoff team.
But do you think that
Johnson as well was a part of that?
Do you think though that, and I'm going to come back to your Woody point, do you think that Woody, after now coming back to the team, only being back with the team for a couple of months now, is trying to set up his general manager, and in theory, because maybe they draft one in April, is trying to set up Sam Darnold to fail? Is that what you're suggesting?
I don't know. Listen, all I know is that you said it perfectly. He's trying to sell season tickets. He's trying to get the money in. That's what he's trying to do.
So why aren't you spending money then?
Well, because maybe, as you said it, you brought it up. I'm now taking your words and now throwing them back right at you. It's very Will Pontian.
Yeah.
How do you know? Listen, to me, it is very coincidental that he's now back and things are beginning to look terrible again. They are now beginning to see all of this happen. We are not going to ever know what Joe Douglas is dealing with behind the scenes. We have no idea. They're going to make it, that everything's going well. And, they're going to come up with every excuse to try and say, well, we didn't sign this guy because, as Ian said, Kenny Golladay was too expensive. What? As a Jets fan, what are you kidding me? I've seen many people on social media basically say that they are an absolute abomination to the NFL. Why? Because they're not signing these players like how you said, Judon. He's now up in New England, which we'll get to shortly. But it's just a disaster on the other side of MetLife Stadium. DeLuca, I don't know. We haven't even got to you yet with the Jets. What are your short thoughts on them?
Yeah, I'll keep them brief. Because you guys touched on just about everything. I'm just kidding. I don't really care that much. Look, it could be Joe Douglas. It might be the Johnsons. We don't know. But here's the thing. Douglas is the one on the short leash right now, because now that Adam Gase is gone, that's the next person to look to, is the general manager. That's just the way the chain of command works. So if the Jets don't continue to look at this product, if the Jets fans see this product and it doesn't change that much, they're absolutely going for the guy who, because who really is saying
it's just wrong.
It's Douglas, or is it not? We don't know. So the chain of command would just be like, look, it's got to be the general manager. That's what the general manager is supposed to do.
Yes, but the common denominator, though, is that the general manager is not the one that signs the checks. That's the problem that people do not understand.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree.
And I want to leave you guys with this thought. Wasn't when they hired Robert Saleh to be their head coach, wasn't that supposed to be the spark that because Saleh was such a fire starter that was supposed to bring in all these prize players to the Jets? Where are they? Where are they?
People refuse to acknowledge the ownership as the problem until you've gone through another general manager.
Right.
Things still are the same and bad.
Right.
So I think at this point, which is unfortunate for Joe Douglas, but that's what's going to have to happen for Jets fans to realize this might be on the owners at this point, is they're going to have to go through Joe Douglas in order to see. And if it's the same, then they will see that it's clearly above the general manager.
Well, I think they know. I think
start calling for selling.
I think. Well, they can. I think Jets fans have been calling for selling for a decade now.
Yeah, but essentially, look,
they've been selling since Super Bowl III.
Well, remember they went to the back-to-back AFC Championship games.
Big
but Jets fans have been at one Jets Drive in Florham Park clamoring for the Johnsons to sell now for 10 years.
Yeah.
Jets fans know that it's the Johnsons. They know it's the Johnsons.
But when you know they're not going anywhere.
But to have that much cap space.
Owners are the most stubborn people in existence. They will never budge.
But to have that much cap space, look, why don't you call the Eagles? Why don't you give them some of your cap space you don't want to use? Why don't you call the Saints? Ask them if they want some of the cap space right now that they're $40 million over the cap. Ask them if they want some of your cap space because you're not spending it.
Yeah,
you're not.
I agree. Look, I think it should come down to the Johnsons, but as I said, football owners are the most stingy, most stubborn people in existence. They die owning these teams. They will never give up their babies ever.
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you this, DeLuca. That sentence right there that you just did was the perfect segue into an owner giving up his team essentially to a head coach, being Robert Kraft, giving up his team and general manager duties to his head coach in Bill Belichick. And I'll tell you something here, guys, because again, that was a great transition, by the way, DeLuca. Great job. I got to give that all the credit to you on that one. Let's be honest here, okay? The New England Patriots, in my opinion, guys, they're not back yet.
No.
They are 1 year away from being back.
Yeah.
1 year. 1 year away. Give it time. Right now, the New England Patriots, they are ranked number 8 in terms of total cap space remaining with $25 million, roughly $26 million. We'll round up $26 million in cap space. And they signed players like the following: Nelson Aguilar, who had a phenomenal season in Las Vegas. I was about to say Oakland. Kendrick Bourne, who, by the way, they tried trading for from San Francisco time after time after time, and we saw him do great things with Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, and Jimmy Garoppolo as well. And Bill Belichick tried to pry him away from John Lynch, and he said no, but instead he got him in free agency. He signed a big money contract to 2 brand new tight ends in Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. He also signed the aforementioned Matthew Judon. Also, he signed away from my Philadelphia Eagles, the Green Goblin, Jalen Mills, Kyle Van Noy, and re-signed Dietrich Wise Jr. as well, who Dietrich Wise, I feel like he's been there my entire life, but kudos to him because he continues to be a solid defensive end and a starter nonetheless with Bill Belichick for a very long time. And to sum it all up, they retained Cam Newton as well. So they obviously got some weapons around Cam Newton, which is a nice thing, obviously. But now the whole thing is that can Cam Newton stay healthy? Can this team stay healthy? They also have a solid core already with the guys like Stephon Gilmore. We don't know how long he's going to be there because they're looking to potentially move him. There's rumors that they might move him. Dante Hightower, who is a linebacker, he can go right opposite of Matthew Judon. Okay, he opted out last year. Devin McCourty, he's also there as well. And also with what's his face also retired. Patrick Chung did retire, so they do have that spot open that was just filled by Jalen Mills. So again, this team slowly on the comeback trail following, as Ian did put on the prompt, a reload, not a rebuild. Ian, let's go to you first. Reload, not a rebuild. Elaborate.
Well, I think the one name that you had left out of that whole spiel was the fact that they re-signed Cam Newton. That was really the biggest surprise to me because I just and look, I invite everyone that's watching to please tell me if I'm wrong, but I just did not see the chemistry between him and Bill Belichick. I didn't. Or him and Josh McDaniels. I can't, the number of times I watched the New England Patriots game this year, whether they were on national television on Sunday night, Monday night, whatever it was. And just saw him sitting on the bench pouting. I mean, look, he went through a lot. He had his whole COVID, where did he have COVID? Did he not have COVID? And then he was sidelined for a few games. I mean, it looked like at the very first couple of weeks of the season, it looked like the gamble was perfect for the Patriots. It was like, wow, perfect transition, Brady to Cam, and Cam is all of a sudden refining his game in New England. But as the season went along, and it seemed like he got less and less healthy, and it seemed like the same injuries, or I would say, the same issues kept arising for him that really, downplayed the way he performed on the field. I I just didn't see the chemistry there. So clearly there is chemistry there because they tried putting Stidham in at the end of the year. So Stidham clearly isn't the answer. So they went back to Cam. But yes, I think they're still a year away. I think they still have a lot of what ifs right now for them. And I think this year, 2021, or I should say next season, 2021 is going to be the time to answer them. What's the story with Julian Edelman's health?
Yeah.
Can
He
Nelson
played, one game this year, I think? One or two?
Yeah, I mean, can Nelson Aguilar be a number one wide receiver? He hasn't had to be before. Can N'Keal Harry finally be the wide receiver that they drafted in the first round?
Well, he's another one that is a part of trade rumor.
Sony Michel, where was he this past year? So there's a lot of question marks surrounding at least offensively and defensively as well, because we don't know what the story with Stephon Gilmore is. Surrounding the Patriots. I think they'll be competitive. I think they'll kind of hang right in there in that 6-7 wild card discussion. Same as they did.
Think so too.
Yeah, same as they did this past year. I just don't think they have the ability at this point to overtake Buffalo. And to Buffalo's credit, I mean, they just loaded up even more offensively. Now you have Emmanuel Sanders opposite Stephon Diggs, on top of everything else that they have, on top of Josh Allen's mobility. And then also for Buffalo to add a little more tight end depth. They wanted Kyle Rudolph, but then went and got a nice serviceable tight end from Seattle and Jacob Hollister. So I think I don't think they're there yet to recapture the AFC East title. I think it's going to be Buffalo's reign for a little while, but Joey, I think you said it the best there. I think that they're a year away, but I think this year in 2021 they'll be in that second or third wild card discussion. Will they get there? I'm not sure, but we'll let the season play out.
But the crazy part, Rob DeLuca, is that we've seen also numerous times Hunter Henry, he tried to pry him away from LA, tried to pry Kendrick Bourne away, then all of a sudden Bill Belichick comes calling at the new league year, or just beforehand, obviously. Tampering, if you will. Not actually. They let those things slide. New England, your thoughts on the Patriots? Do they get back in the conversation of the AFC East, or not even that? Do they get back in the playoff conversation?
They're already back in the playoff conversation. Because look, we have to stop underestimating the man that is Bill Belichick. This man plays chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
Yes.
Because let's take a look at this here. All these players, these star players for the Patriots, all of a sudden opt out in a year that they lose Tom Brady.
Yeah. And
a year that is clearly not normal. And now they have more cap space than Kingdom Come itself.
Yeah.
And they have already practically reloaded fully.
Yeah.
And if Cam Newton can improve on what was, I will call it, an average year.
I don't see it. I'm with Ian on that. I don't see it.
It's tough, but that's why they only signed him for 1 year. And also, there's still a whole NFL draft coming with a boatload of potentially very good quarterbacks. So
and
they have a decent pick too, and a lot of things to now trade with to find their guy. And so we have to stop thinking that Bill Belichick doesn't know what he's doing. I think he knew that while his team was going to be competitive this past season, they were not going to quite make it. But in this wild card, I'll agree with Ian and Joey here. Buffalo is too stacked right now. This is their division for at least one more year. But the wild card conversation, oh my God, especially with the extra team added now, oh, absolutely, they're in that hunt. They're going to be right to the end. That 17th game. This is a team that's looking at that 9-8, 10, probably 9-8, 10-7 type record, if you ask me.
That is a weird thing to say, by the way.
Oh, I got
10-7.
Oh, yeah.
I'm amazed I got through that.
No more 500 record exists anymore.
I was about to say, I was like, wait a second. That to me sounds very, very weird. But just to go back here, guys, and you look at some of these mock drafts, and you see certain things here. I look at certain quarterbacks that maybe Bill Belichick might trade down for, and that is what he does. He trades down. I don't remember the last time that he has a first round draft pick. I don't know. I can't remember it. But
what
I do
He
know
always
is
trades it.
Back then he didn't need him. Now he needs him.
Right. Exactly.
Well, he also wasn't he also this year isn't drafting 32nd either.
But that's true. Yeah, no, he's drafting with a good number now. This might be the first time we see him trade up. We don't know.
He is drafting 15, but this is something else too. He could potentially this is the time where he might also try and throw in Stephon Gilmore as well to maybe throw it down. I don't want to elaborate on that though. The fact of the matter is that this is the time, and I don't want to say this is the quarterback class to say, okay, maybe they trade down or maybe they even take a quarterback at 15, because you know what? Cam Newton could potentially be a mentor. There's a possibility that Jarrett Stidham could even be a mentor as well. Listen, he might not be able to play, Stidham that is. He might be able to teach. You don't know. There is a good possibility that at some point he's going to look for the future, okay? Because some quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford, he said that he would go to any 30 NFL teams. Well, wait a minute. There's a total of 32 teams. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. He refused to go to New England. Refused because of the mental aspect of it. That's for a completely different show. But maybe you might get someone that, maybe a free agent quarterback that might take his word for something. Okay? Or maybe you might have to draft one. Who knows? Maybe you might not want to throw a lot of money. In today's NFL, you see quarterbacks, okay, albeit obviously with Tom Brady being Tom Brady and winning the Super Bowl. But just a year prior when Patrick Mahomes was under his entry-level contract, okay? Russell Wilson was also under his entry-level contract when he won his Super Bowl. The new NFL is where you stack guys around you, which is what we're seeing Bill Belichick do, and maybe he might draft one that, because he is a player whisperer. He is a coach, a general manager that can develop these players into superstars. Hello, look at Tom Brady. Guys, let's move on here because we are already an hour and 15 minutes in, and we wanted to keep it around an hour, but, the three of us, we always go on.
We love you. That's why we give you more content.
I appreciate that. I love you guys too, but no.
I was talking to our viewers.
Oh, yeah.
All about the viewers.
That is true.
We appreciate all of you. We do.
Yes, we do love the viewers, and we do appreciate everybody being here with us this afternoon as well. Let's not forget, guys, we're going to get to the Arizona Cardinals because they were the other team that made some noise with J.J. Watt and A.J. Green. But first, we want to get to Richard Sherman, who is the best cornerback still available on the market. Where does he go? Because the New York Jets were supposed to be suitors for him. Unfortunately, he most likely will not even go there. Why? Because, I don't know, maybe Joe Douglas is not opening his wallet. Excuse me, Johnsons. That was bad. It was the Johnsons. That's what I meant to say. Ian Schraier, let's see what you got.
I mean, this just goes back to my point. I mean, this seems like a perfect reunion with Robert Saleh, who was his defensive coordinator in San Francisco. This would give the New York Jets some semblance of a number one cornerback. Look, he's not the same player he was with the Legion of Boom in Seattle. He seems like he has rejuvenated his career a bit in San Francisco. I think it's a lot to ask him to do the same at this point of his career with the Jets, who are just struggling defensively aside from really at this point Quinnen Williams. I mean, what can you expect out of CJ Mosley at this point after two unhealthy seasons?
Nothing.
So right now, without Richard Sherman, I couldn't even tell you either of these guys. I mean, I know Bryce Hall a little bit, but the starting cornerbacks right now for the New York Jets are Bless Austin and Bryce Hall. And then I think even Corey Ballantyne, the former Giant, is in the mix in their secondary. So I think Richard Sherman, considering his relationship with Saleh, would be a welcome addition for the Jets. I mean, look, his antics would play perfectly into what the Johnsons love so much. But I think he would just be a perfect stopgap cornerback at this point, at least give them somebody that can match up against the opposing number one wide receiver. Because if not, I mean, look, the Jets do have, I believe, 2 first-round draft picks and 2 second-round draft picks. So they have the capital to go out there, and if they take a quarterback or an offensive weapon with their number 2 overall picks, they could do, they can take Seattle's pick. I think it's at 22 or so, and go out and draft a corner maybe, but at this point, I mean, it just makes too much sense. Like, go get him. At least it's something. You don't have anything resembling that of a professional a pro secondary right now. Besides Marcus May, your cornerbacks are, I mean, for the most part, are off the street guys. Go out there and sign somebody. Richard Sherman, he doesn't have the perfect track record. He's not the same player he once was, but please go sign somebody for that secondary, please.
Where does he go, Rob DeLuca? Because you also have Malcolm Butler still on the market as well. You also have K'Wan Williams on the market, Casey Hayward, Quentin Dunbar still on the market. And I think right now, Richard Sherman, again, that he is the name, but Malcolm Butler is also the name out there too. Obviously, the talent level is completely different. Obviously, Malcolm Butler, we can't take away his talent because he has it, obviously. He's no longer with the Titans, Butler, that is. Sherman is no longer with the 49ers. Where does he go? Where do you think, especially if the Jets are not the place to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough decision. Look, the market is large right now for cornerbacks. There's a lot of names you mentioned there, Joey. So it's tough to say. I do think the Jets would be a good fit for him. You know,
where does he go if the Jets are not the place because they don't want to open up their wallets?
Right. I mean, and that's the way it seems. I mean, you got to look at someone who might want to open their wallets, and you know what? Someone who's got a lot of cap space. And they were actually talking to a certain wide receiver. His name's escaping me right now. Otherwise, I'd talk about it. But a certain wide receiver that's supposed to help out Carson Wentz
in Indianapolis.
So, you know what? You got to wonder, are they trying to maybe buckle down their defense? Maybe they're trying to make a flash in the pan run here in the Indianapolis Colts, perhaps. You know.
Well, we know how Ian thinks, or what Ian thinks about the Indianapolis Colts defense. We remember that vividly.
Yeah, so you got to wonder, do they take a stab at Richard Sherman? Would be very helpful, and with $41 million in cap space, you know, you got plenty of room to get him. So you got to wonder about that, because you know, I also think at this point in Richard Sherman's career, he's limiting. He himself might even be limiting his options to a winner. He might want one more, you know, before he calls it a career. So you got to look at someone that has the potential to potentially drive themselves into the playoffs and maybe go beyond.
Well, you see, knowing Richard Sherman, though, he probably is going to be chasing after the money. That's the whole thing. And
that is also true considering he has a ring. So it's pretty much at this point, what does he want more at his ripening age? Does he want one more ring, or does he want to try to catch that bag? It's all that's what it comes down to him. So that's why I like the Colts if he's trying to catch the bag. And based on someone who's got money, a little bit of money to work with, if you want a shot at a ring, maybe look at Baltimore, I guess. Not that they need him per se, but it's somewhere to go if you're looking for the ring.
Well, also Kansas City is really a team.
No, Kansas City is too, but
they have $22 million in cap space, and obviously,
the question is, do they? I don't know if the Chiefs necessarily need him back there. You know,
well,
it comes down to also needing a cornerback back there, because he also, not only does he want the bag or the ring, he wants to play too.
Well, Tyrann Mathieu can only do so much.
That's also
true. He can only do so much. Bashaud
Breeland, he definitely wants a good amount of reps. He doesn't want to go there to be a bench player and only come in when someone gets hurt.
Fair. Yeah,
but so you got
a team like Cleveland.
Or Charvarius Ward, excuse me, I forgot about him.
Yeah,
Cleveland, you know,
how about a team like Cleveland? Put him on the opposite side of Denzel Ward. Look, he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be an opposite. You know, he doesn't have to be the number one cornerback option. I mean, maybe you could even put. You know, he can, even at 32 years of age, he could still. He's not at the top of his game, but he can still be a solid number two cornerback option, and that's an area where I think the Browns would be a perfect place. I mean,
also,
look,
a team we're gonna just because they've got money. Just because
they didn't sign JJ, so
a new one. Just because we're gonna have to look at them, and they've got money. The three of us don't want to hear it. Washington, they've got the money. They could do it. They could do it in a second.
Yeah, they do
without blinking. They wouldn't even miss that much money.
Well, even let's not forget also Arizona, because
I was also thinking about Arizona. You know, the moves they're making.
They've got no cap space.
They don't have the most money in the world.
Right.
So
they're down to like 1.5 million after
around 4. But
no, the AJ Green signing now it's like down. Well, the problem with the Cardinals is and I know we're going to get to Arizona in a second, is that they're at like 1.5 million, but they've got like 18 million in dead cap. I mean, most of that is
so it's So Arizona, I don't think Arizona has the money for him.
Yeah, that's mostly Patty P and dead cap. Like, a lot of dead cap.
Dead cap right now, fellas. Dead cap for the Arizona Cardinals 6138222 is the final number right now. And
is it? Oh wow, I thought it was more than that.
And the biggest reason right now is from outside linebacker Devondre Campbell, outside linebacker, his signing bonus of $4 million when he was cut. And also Robert Alford as well. He did re-sign, obviously, at a smaller deal, and 1.5 million of that is also on will be.
Sorry, yeah, the 18 million in dead cap space. That was another team. I apologize.
No, that is okay. So we obviously do know with Arizona, we did bring that up. That was a perfect segue again, Ian Schraier. Good job there, fellas. Transitions have been great today. But what we do know is that Arizona, they did let go. Not technically, they didn't let go, but they mutually parted ways with Patrick Peterson. Okay, he is no longer in the secondary, but they did sign AJ Green. Why? Because Larry Fitzgerald is officially a goner.
Yeah,
that's it. That is crazy to say, but count down, ladies and gentlemen, the 5 years until he will be in the Professional Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, because it will be happening, in my opinion. First ballot. AJ Green is getting paid $3.5 million on I believe, a 1-year deal. So let's see. Yeah, 1 year, $6 million contract. He does have, it looks as if that, he does have a void with certain things. So it's just $6 million straight through. The cap hit, though, is at $3.5 million. If that is correct. Yes, it is. So the extra $1.25 million is a signing bonus. So they also signed Green to take over that spot for Larry Fitz, and then they also signed J.J. Watt as well to go on the opposite side of Chandler Jones. So you've got names there, but is it enough to propel them in the NFC West? Ian Schraier, I don't think so, in my opinion, even though Seattle is a little bit in flames right now.
Yeah, I think the NFC West is going to be another division, another example of just teams beating up on each other, especially because San Francisco is going to come back healthy, hopefully, next year. So we can't write off the 49ers even after their season full of injuries. Stafford in LA, so they've upgraded now. You know, they've upgraded at quarterback, still returning a lot of the same team, especially from that defense. And look, yeah, things with Seattle right now are up in flames. You know, is Russell Wilson going to get traded? No, I don't think it's going to happen. But I think with the Arizona Cardinals, they're kind of still in the same position as they were last year with one big exception. That's J.J. Watt. Yeah. That scoring was not a problem for that team last year. I mean, take away the week 16, week 17 results where I think they only put up like 7 or 14 points because Kyler was hurt and he just didn't play. And I think they were, I don't remember if they were out of the playoff picture yet, but this is a team that doesn't have that has a real knack for scoring. I mean, I wasn't thrilled for Arizona that they let Kenyon Drake go. I know it was between him and Chase Edmonds kind of alternating in terms of a 2-back system there, but now you've got AJ Green, who's a perfect supplement to Larry Fitzgerald. He's a different type of receiver. I mean, he's not a guy who goes over the middle much. He's not, Fitz became more of a slot guy at the end of his career. AJ Green and DeAndre Hopkins, to a certain extent, are pretty much the same type of receiver. I mean, you add him with Christian Kirk, who really came on as a tremendous number 2 wide receiver. Now Kirk's got to be the number 3. I mean, so you've got 3 deep threats on that team right now. Andy Isabella is a real nice number 4 slot guy. That can really work the sidelines as well. But for Arizona, no, I don't want to put them, at the top of the NFC West just yet, because J.J. Watt, the issue with J.J. Watt remains the same. It's health. But I think they're going to take a step forward again. I think they finished 7-9, 8-8 this year. I expected them to be a playoff team. They were my sleeper team in the NFC, and with the way they started, I was ready to knock down my guarantee and say, look, told you at the start of the season that the Cardinals were going to be a playoff team. Unfortunately, they weren't. But I think they'll take a step forward. I mean, now you've got Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt if he can stay healthy on opposite sides of that defensive line.
Yeah.
Isaiah Simmons, their draft pick from last year from Clemson, really started coming into his own a little bit. The biggest question for right now, I mean, aside from having the highest paid safety in the league in Budda Baker, is they need a cornerback. Who's going to replace Patty P? I mean, like I said, they don't have a lot of money right now. I think they've got $1.5 million available in cap space. So unfortunately, unless they find a way to restructure a contract after getting JJ, Richard Sherman and guys like Malcolm Butler are probably off the table, even on prove-it deals at this point. But all signs I think they're drafting in the 20s. So all signs are pointing to them drafting a cornerback in this year's draft, which they just desperately need at this point because they don't have any depth at that position right now.
Literally nothing. And in one point in time when the secondary was their strength is now a
Patty P and DRC.
Yeah. Right. Well, wow. You really are showing your age there, Ian Schraier.
But those were the two, weren't they?
Yeah. That's Giants legend DRC.
No. That is Philadelphia Eagles legend.
We could go back.
Listen,
that was what it was, right? It was Patty P and DRC.
And it was also Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie and Nnamdi Asomugha, which we know how that story ended and how that book ended as well. But I digress there. So, guys, let's wrap this show up because we've been on the air for a while. But one thing I want to bring up here, guys, is that we've seen a couple of franchise tags, right? And I want to play this game here quickly with only two guys that really have been tagged that are really noteworthy. Chris Godwin and Allen Robinson. I want to ask the two of you here, first Ian Schraier, where Allen Robinson first with the Chicago Bears. Now that Andy Dalton is in, Mitchell Trubisky is up in Buffalo as the backup to Josh Allen. Is this a good slap of the franchise tag? And who will be the quarterback? Will it be Nick Foles? Will it be Andy Dalton? What's the deal?
Well, I think that decision will be made in training camp or in hopefully we have preseason games, so they can battle that out in training camp and in the couple of preseason games that they have if this new CBA comes through that with the additional regular season game is going to cut down on the number of preseason games. But I thought Allen Robinson wanted out of his home the most. Talk about someone who I thought was very unhappy when this team, when this front office decided to trade up one pick to go get Mitch Trubisky and basically traded all their draft assets to the 49ers and has helped build the 49ers into the power that they've been the last couple of years. And now, of all things, Mitch Trubisky is gone, and now he's in Buffalo, and now he's backing up Josh Allen in Buffalo. But the thing with Allen Robinson, even though it seems like he wants to stay in Chicago, is he didn't want to be franchise tagged for the same reason that any player doesn't want to be franchise tagged. Because God forbid you get hurt. Look, you're making as much money as the number one wide receiver is in football. But if you get hurt, that's it. Who's going to, it's probably the most money you're ever going to make again. It's the same reason Le'Veon Bell held out. It's the same reason guys like Melvin Gordon held out. Like, no one wants to be tagged. No one, because God forbid you get hurt. It's very unlikely someone will ever sign you to the same type of contract ever again. And you want long-term security because you have a family, and these are things that you need to be thinking about in your career. I think for Allen Robinson, they need to find a way to, renegotiate his contract unless they can't. They're the team that I was trying to say before that has $18 million right now in dead cap. Yeah. So, for the Bears, they can go a couple of different ways. I mean, they can franchise tag him, which they already have, and try to backload his contract because they really don't have a whole lot of cap space. I think they're somewhere in the $8 million range. So I think if they can try to backload one of the top wide receivers right now in the league, that would be their best move going forward. But if they decide to get a little, if they decide to finagle with maybe like a transition tag where they can backload his contract but not front load it, a team can sweep in and front load that contract, and then the Bears would get no compensation out of it. So I think it's two options. Either they're going to backload his contract and find a way to lock him up long term, or maybe he might become maybe he becomes a trade candidate at this point, because I think right now AR-12 could very easily be a holdout guy come training camp.
So to answer the question though, was it a good decision for the Chicago Bears to slap that franchise tag on him?
They had to. Look, if it's one thing if Allen Robinson said he didn't want to stay. he wants to stay in Chicago. That's the thing that surprised me the most. So yes, it was the right move, but he doesn't want to play under it. So yes, it was the right move, but I think the question more should be, what do they do next? I don't know. I mean, they need to try to hang on to him. Their next best receiver is Anthony Miller, who really has still yet to pan out in Chicago. So otherwise, Chicago's going into rebuild mode. And then right now with quarterbacks like Nick Foles and Andy Dalton, it doesn't seem like they're ready to rebuild just yet. It looks like they're trying to take one last shot with guys like Khalil Mack and David Montgomery in their backfield, and try to make one last run at an NFC North title, and dare I say even a championship. But they've got to figure this Allen Robinson thing out. It's not so much the franchise tag; it's how they proceed from here.
Well, then, Rob DeLuca, now the question to you here is that Chris Godwin, he was slapped with the franchise tag as well in Tampa Bay. Your thoughts on that, and was that a good deal for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Because they've got now a lot of weapons that they not only have discovered. We knew Chris Godwin was good, but we also now see Scotty Miller. We also see Antonio Brown, who's a free agent. How do you know he might not come back? Maybe it was a thing where you could have let Godwin walk and maybe recoup in different departments. Was this a good slap of the franchise tag? Yes or no, Rob DeLuca?
Absolutely, they had to do this because they're still. Well, look, they slapped it on them. They're not done yet. They're working on getting that deal for Godwin, because you don't let someone like that walk away. You just won a Super Bowl. And I don't think Godwin had any interest, really had all that much interest in leaving either. He just won a Super Bowl. Why would he go anywhere? This team is stacked right now, especially if they get everybody back. Why would he leave? Especially when he is still considered one of the top guys on that receiving core. So I think that's a good slap of the tag. And yet, I think
a combined, I don't mean to interrupt you, a combined $31 million to Godwin and Mike Evans. Again,
that's right. And
a lot of money, but you also won a Super Bowl. So
yeah, you won a Super Bowl. They're gonna get a deal for him. They're gonna figure this out, because you don't let talent like this just leave without at least trying. Because let's be real, as long as Tom Brady's still the quarterback, they have a shot at a Super Bowl. And this receiving core stays around, they got a shot at a Super Bowl for quite a while. So, because Tom Brady's a freak of nature that never shows any signs of slowing down. We thought we saw it in his final year in New England. Comes to Tampa Bay, tears it up, takes them from I believe it was 5-5 to a Super Bowl. And that it's just comes down to the fact that Chris Godwin probably wanted to be in Tampa Bay. I don't think he ever really had any.
He wants to win.
Leaving. Yeah, and he likes winning, which is what you can obviously do in Tampa Bay. And I think that eventually he will get his deal. And if we want to touch on Juju Smith-Schuster, I don't personally think he wanted to stay. I don't think he got any other offers. Therefore, he signed back with the Steelers. I don't think he had any other offers out there.
I disagree. I disagree about Juju. I think he was very much in talks with the Jets about potentially going to the Jets. I think for Juju Smith-Schuster, it was a very underwhelming year for him with the Steelers. He's supposed to be the number one option on that team. At one point, it felt like he became the number 3 option behind Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. And I think for Juju Smith-Schuster, this is a guy who's thinking big money down the road, and he signed a 1-year lucrative offer to remain in Pittsburgh to try to amp up those numbers to try and get signed to a big deal next year. I don't think it's about that he didn't have the offers. I think he just wants big wide receiver money, and I think he's going to try and make it happen to lead up into next offseason.
He 100% had the offers, and not only that also, but apparently the secret team that was the part of that was the Philadelphia Eagles, and he turned down more money to stay in the Steel City for obvious reason. It continues to show that there is a lot more work that needs to be done in Philly. But albeit, again, that is going to do it for us here on our NFL free agency special, guys. We didn't get into everything because there's so many different signings here that have come that really have just come to fruition. you look at you look at some of these signings, guys. This is just so many deals have gone through, and we're only about a week into this. We've seen LaMarcus Joyner. He's actually their biggest free agent signing with the New York Jets, even though that was a 1-year deal as well. Carlos Hyde is with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Dante Moncrief is with the Houston Texans. Rob Gronkowski re-signs for obvious reason in Tampa Bay. Rudy Ford went from the Philadelphia Eagles to Jacksonville Jaguars. Tyrod Taylor went from the Chargers to the Texans. That is definitely something to watch for if Deshaun Watson does not come back, because Tyrod Taylor has always been that underrated player who can come in and start and potentially make some noise. Philip Dorsett went from the Seahawks to the Jaguars. Cody Parkey re-signed in Cleveland. The aforementioned from earlier, Jonathan Hankins, re-upped in Las Vegas. Mitchell Trubisky, that signing was made official from Chicago to Buffalo. Kenyon Drake went from Arizona to Las Vegas. Kenny Golladay, we brought that up, went from the Lions to the Giants. And another big deal, guys, they lost Jacob Hollister, the Seattle Seahawks, but instead they take one right out of their rivals' hands in the Los Angeles Rams and take away Gerald Everett, who would have been a really good, nice security blanket for Matthew Stafford. No longer there. He is now up in Seattle.
Yeah, Tyler Higbee is more the guy there now.
Right, exactly. And we saw him, we saw spurts of him last year as well. Will Fuller went from Houston to Miami. That is another thing there that we'll have to talk about in the future, because that could change the entire draft process or the draft analysis or analogy of the Miami Dolphins. Desmond Trufant was signed to a 1-year deal to the Chicago Bears. There are so many deals here, guys, that we can just keep talking about. Theo Riddick stayed in Las Vegas. Emmanuel Sanders was signed with the Bills. AJ Green, we brought up earlier, Bengals to the Cardinals. Jamal Williams went from the Packers to the Lions. Okay, he is still in that division as well. John Ross, we brought that up earlier. Ronald Darby went from the football team to the Broncos. Takaris McKinley went from the Raiders to the Browns. Danico Autry from the Colts to the Titans. Mario Edwards, he did get a big money deal. I believe it was about 3 years, roughly about $25 or $30 million to stay in Chicago. Denzel Perryman, the middle linebacker, went from the Chargers to the Panthers. Janoris Jenkins replaces Malcolm Butler and also Adoree Jackson. Janoris Jenkins now signs in Tennessee as well. We brought up Mike Glennon earlier. Kyle Van Noy we brought up as well. Something else also, guys, too. Pat Elflein went from the Jets to the Panthers. So not only do the Jets have just another hole or holes everywhere, they also lost their starting center as well. So a lot of movement. And also, actually, we will finish this one off here. Corey Linsley, the starting center for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, went to Los Angeles to replace Mike Pouncey, who retired with his brother Marquise this past offseason. And to conclude this one, guys, Yannick Ngakoue has signed a deal with the Las Vegas Raiders as well. That was a big thing at the time when he was supposed to get big money from the Jaguars, was traded to Minnesota. Did not work out. Mid-year trade to Baltimore. Now he is in Las Vegas with John Gruden. Guys, any last thoughts before we wrap this thing up here?
No, not really. I think just the piece about Ngakoue, it's just that he just has not made that big money again yet, because he just has not performed since his days in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Wherever he's gone, he just has not panned out. We saw what happened with him in Minnesota. We saw what happened to the Ravens. He's just bouncing around from team to team, because I think at this point, as much as the Giants wanted him and Giant fans were clamoring for Ngakoue to be a Giant at one point, I mean, I think as Giant fans, you got to breathe a deep sigh of relief, even though maybe they could use him right now, for the pass rush. I'm not so sure that, with his output right now, that he would be worth the money that he's asking.
Rob DeLuca, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of movement around the NFL. Love to see it. Soon enough, the NFL draft. Next thing you know, NFL draft is right around the corner. And It's gonna hit. It's gonna hit us. It's gonna come and go. And then next thing you know, it's training camps. It's preseason, and all of a sudden, it's football season once again.
Don't rush it, because we love the summer, don't we? But we also love football season as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot thank you all enough for joining us here. But before we do go, we do want to pay a couple of bills. We do want to say, though, for our show, be sure to subscribe to the Primetime Rundown by searching the Primetime Rundown with the following podcast apps: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. Also, if you want to watch the video version of us, please search I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. You will find the Primetime Rundown first up right there. Also, the Essential Wrestling Podcast, presented to you by ProWrestlingPick'em.com, will return this coming Tuesday, or actually 6 days from today, Tuesday, March 30th, starting at 6 p.m. with our guys, Al Carl, Ryan Joy, Tyler Adele, John DeConnie, John Smith, and Gary Miheffi, who will bring you the latest in all of wrestling, as well as the Essential Wrestling Podcast WrestleMania special show, presented to you by Pro Wrestling Pick'em. That will come to you Saturday, April 10th at 3 p.m. right here, all on the Eastern Observer. Also, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to start your day with the Daily Wrestling News Show, presented to you by Pro Wrestling Pick'em, and Minutes to Bell Time by our own Ryan Joy, who is the star of that show, and comes your way every morning, Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Eastern Observer. So all good things coming ahead, all good NFL signings. This is March, ladies and gentlemen, and we've still got one more week of March, so please enjoy it to the fullest. Guys, Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, for all of us here at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'll see you next time.